Okay, seeing none, then let's proceed to work session items. First item is work session item 6A, the Access Project update. And we're going to have Wally Webster, president of the Access Project, and Marie MacCoy accompanying him. And we'd like you in front of the microphone so we can record you and hear you. Thank you. Yeah. All right, sir, it's yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor and council members. I appreciate this opportunity to give you an update first on the Access Project. The Access Project was started in 2020. For the new members, Access Project was started in 2022. We actually got our 501c3 in 23. And I'm very, very proud to say that one of our very first funders was the city of Lynnwood. And that got us off the ground. The real reason why we started the Access Project is one of the council members was having what she called Let's Talk Safety. And a number of people attended that meeting, and they were pointing what you should be doing, what they should be doing, what they should be doing. And I kind of lost my emotions, if you will. And I stood up and said, let's stop talking about what they should be doing, what you should be doing, and talk about what I am going to do to help bring safety to our community. I went home that night, went to sleep, and middle of the night, I got up and I wrote down about 20 names of people in this city that had some influence. And called the mayor at that time and asked if the council meeting room was available, and she said yes. And then I started dialing. We had about 15 people to show up, and from there, the discussions, we kicked off the Access Project. There were, at that time, there were 5 people who had been caught in crossfire and killed, including 4 teenagers and 1 adult who was sitting in his car drinking his coffee early in the morning. So that was the energy, that was the enthusiasm behind the project. Since that time, we have, and I can go through slides, but I'll just talk. And since that time, we have implemented 3 major programs. And the 3 major programs, the first one was Cops versus Youth Basketball, which we now have expanded that to basketball and volleyball. And we will bring the police officers to the games, and they will compete with these youth, and including officers from Lynnwood. And after they have played for approximately an hour and a half, we stopped the game, gave them refreshments, and sat in a circle. And they talked about the things that were challenging for them, both the officers as well as the youth. And the thing that impressed me most was that officers would give these youth a business card and say, I'd rather get a call from you on my cell phone than to get a call from you about you on 911, because I have to treat it differently. And those officers became a resource for those youth, and a number of them got calls. The other program we started was a peer mediation program. And we trained peers to mediate conflicts among their peers before they escalated into a crisis situation. The first year, school year 24-25, the Edmond School District allowed us to do peer mediation training in 4 high schools. And I'll just mention as a side note, we also did training at Jackson High School in Mill Creek. But in these 4 high schools, we focused on training those youth to mediate the conflicts among their peers. The thing that we did not know and we learned is that those youth trusted their peers more than they trusted adults. They were willing to say exactly what was bothering them and who was threatening them and what their issues were. 25, 26 school year, the school district asked us to train students in all 7 of its high schools, both the traditional and non-traditional, as well as the 4 middle schools. We teamed up with Volunteers of America, their Dispute Resolution Center, to do the training. We trained 171 students in the school district to mediate conflicts among their peers. These students were selected differently by each school, but many of these schools allowed the students to select the students that they felt they trusted most. And there was one school, I won't name it, but they had 45 students who signed up to be peer mediators. And we said, yes, we will not turn anyone away. So that was the peer mediation program was very well executed. The next program we started was with police officers, law enforcement. And what we set up a program with them is that they would have an alternative. If they saw a youth who was demonstrating behavior that did not rise to the level of an arrest, but they felt that that youth needed help, we created a QR code unique to police officers and a hyperlink. They could take that QR code, fill in some information, hit submit, and that would come directly to us. We had it set up so our cell phones would ring any time a police officer made a referral, regardless of the time of day. And that gave us an opportunity to go and meet with those youth. And it also gave the youth and the parents an incentive to work with us because the police is now involved in making the referral. So it was great for the police department in terms of having a resource, and it was great for the parents and the youth to have a resource to get help. And so that, and then we created a website that we tried to attract, or we are attracting youth who are coming to us directly. We find that there are youth that we focus on between the age of 13 and 17, and they could come to us without parental consent. We do take youth 12 and below, but they have to have parental consent. The reason why 13 and 17 was so crucial and our focus group is that there were domestic issues that the youth would like to talk about, but they didn't want their parents, or they didn't want to disturb create conflict within their residency. There were youth who were suffering from abuse of various kinds. They could come to us and talk to us about that. But we made it clear that there were certain things that they said to us that we had to escalate. We could not keep it. So if you threat somebody, we had to escalate that. If you accuse someone in your home of violating your body, we had to escalate that. If you said that you were going to hurt yourself, we had to escalate that. And so those are the 3 areas that we made it very clear on our website. We made it very clear every time we do an intake interview of the conditions in which we could not keep confidential. Anything else, we pledged and we did keep it confidential. We had every type of situation that you could think of. For an example, had a mother that had knocked on the door and came in and said, I need help. And we sat down and talked. She said, I kiss my kids on the forehead when I leave in the morning, and I kiss my kids on the forehead when I get home at night. That's the only time I see them. My 12-year-old is starting to rebel. And is rebelling because he has to get up in the morning, heat the food and the breakfast that I prepared and put in the refrigerator, get his siblings ready for school, and make sure they got off to school. And he said that he's rebelling against doing that. Can you help me? And that's why we reach out to our organizations. We have created, as for your new members, the Access Project is in 3 components. One is what we call referrals in. They can come from community partners, it can come from individuals, it can come from any source like the police departments that will send a referral to us. Then we sit down with that referral and we do an interview, and we call that the assessment, intake assessment. We try to determine the need of that student or that youth. And once we are satisfied that we have determined what that youth needs, the underlying issues, we will then have created about 34, 35 community partners, professional counseling organizations, community services organizations, and all those, and we reach out to them consistently to make sure we keep contact. So when we have a youth that needs that particular service, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club or whether it's Project Girls or whatever organization it might be, whether it's community health centers, whatever organization it might be needed to help that youth, we have made the contacts to make that warm referral. Meaning that we do not use a computer, we do not use a piece of paper. We take that individual to that referral source and introduce them and then leave, simply because they are under some of the same confidentiality restrictions that we are. They can't tell us what's wrong with the student. But the only thing that we ask is that they tell us when they miss a meeting. So if they set up 10, if they estimate they need 10 sessions with that youth, and they only get to number 4 or 5 and that youth misses the appointment, then they can let us know and we will follow up to get that youth back on schedule. So that's what the Access Project is. We try to get to youth who are experiencing behavioral, mental health challenges before those challenges escalate into life-altering, life-changing situations such as we have seen in our city. And that is the reason why we are involved in the SRO program, which we'll discuss later. But before I go into that, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Council Member, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Great. Any council members? Council President.
Just real quick, I really want to thank you two for coming on such short notice. After hearing some of the developments lately and what your response was, I thought it was really important that because of our city's relationship to the Access Project, to hear about this update. And of course, I like to kind of keep tabs and every year check in. You guys are doing something fairly innovative to my understanding. And so just a quick question. How do you guys gauge whether you're succeeding at this mission? Are there metrics you guys are kind of recording, or is that going to lead into the next slides?
That's a good question from the Access Project. When we do our intake process, we have a database that we record the name. We use a lot of zip codes because one of our funders uses zip codes, and to determine the area of service. And we try to track if one of those youth who's been through our program has gotten involved with a matter that requires police actions, or a matter that what they've gotten involved to a situation where they've attempted self-harm or something like that. So we try to track it from that standpoint in terms of success. Now, I will tell you one thing that I really feel great about, but I cannot say this is the Access Project. In 25, I mentioned all of the shootings that occurred in in 22, 23, and 24. In 25, we did not have one single youth who was a victim of homicide. And we're hoping that we made a difference in that. Now, there have been some shootings in 26, but at this point has not, to my knowledge, has not been a homicide. And we try very hard to work with these kiddos who are having these challenges and who are willing to talk about it and get some help. So yes, we track the ones that come through us to see if there's they will come back in terms of for additional services, but we track them to see if they've gotten involved with criminal activities.
All right. Any other questions? Councilmember Armato.
Thank you so much for coming in and for giving us a presentation about the Access Project. My question is about the forthcoming part of the presentation about school resource officers. I think I want to understand a little bit about the ask that's being made from a council standpoint. Given that it's the school district that can decide whether or not school resource officers are a thing they want to bring back, what role are you looking, what input, what are you looking for from us as we go forward with the rest of the presentation? Is it a budgetary ask for the police department? Is it just general support? I want to understand a little bit more so I can have an expectation as we move into the next part of the presentation.
Okay. Well, we're not asking the city for any funds whatsoever, any budgetary. Yes, the city is a part of this project from the standpoint that within the jurisdiction of the city, we have the shootings and the crimes and everything else being committed. And so it impacts the city from her standpoint of her reputation and from whether this city is a safe place to visit, shop, etc. And we're still working through Alderwood Mall, the young youth that was killed in Alderwood Mall. Still, is the mall safe? Okay. So, yeah, from that standpoint. And let me just talk to you about, let me just say the reason why the Access Project is involved with the SRO. The SRO and the city and the Access Project have very common goals and objectives and purpose, and that is preventive. How we prevent and how we help youth who are having challenges solve those before they commit a serious act. The SROs were in the schools helping youth who are having difficult challenges and getting them help before it required an arrest. And so with those common goals, and just go back just a little bit, I was out of the country when the incident occurred at Meadowdale Park in Lynnwood. When I turned on my phone, I must have had 20 text messages informing me of the shooting, and the question was, what are we going to do? How can you help us? What are you going to do about this? And I was aware that the school district discontinued the SRO program in 2020, and I think Lynnwood High School was the last one that was terminated in 21. But when I looked at the statistics, and we can look at that, before the SRO when the SRO program was in place, before it was canceled or terminated, and then after, compare the 911 calls, compare the arrests that were made as a result of those calls, compare the numbers that were charged. And I didn't look at who was convicted, but who was charged as a result of that. There's an increase before and after. So it was a strong statistical indication that those SROs made a difference. Now, many people stepped away from SRO, believing and under the hypotheses without data indicating that they were the gateway to the penitentiary and to the criminal justice system. That was all over. But today, I have not had anyone to show us data that supports that perception. I can show you data where the SROs did make a difference. So the reason is that the Lynnwood Police Department, in an effort to help with this safety issue, agreed to place a police officer in the SRO program and covered that expense in the police department for that staff position. And so by initiating that program, we call it a reimagined program. Reimagined because we want to sit down like this with students, with staff, with administrators, with community members, and say, what would you like to see different? How can we pilot a SRO program and understand its impact, understand its weaknesses, and then change to make a difference? So treat it as a pilot. And that's where we are now, is working with the city, we even have met and talked with Everett, Edmonds, Mount Lake Terrace, Lynnwood, mayors and police chiefs and others to help understand, as well as community members. It's really sad, as I pointed out to the president of the school board, when a parent calls you on the phone and says, I want to ask you a question, that's my reason for calling. What is that question? Is it safe for my son to go from one school to the next? I'm concerned about his safety. The 20 text messages and calls that I received is because the shooting that occurred in Meadowdale Park occurred right at the time that 4 schools were being dismissed. And all of those youth was walking to and from on the street when that shooting occurred. And then all of the first aid, police, fire, ambulance, and all of those vehicles coming down 168th Street with their lights blinking, sirens going, and students were afraid. And then some were afraid to go back to school after that incident. And then there are parents who have taken their kids out of school because they didn't feel that they're safe. So we can't just talk about it. We just can't keep talking about it. We have to do something. We have to try something. If it's wrong, change it, but do something.
Okay, we're going to step it back, though. Council Vice President, do you have a question about,
Yes,
in general,
I
about
do.
the Access
I do,
Project?
actually.
Okay.
I was going to say thank you guys for being here and letting us all know about the Access Project. I will have SRO stuff later, but for me, my question regarding the Access Project is, Wally, how are you funded, and how do you feel about your funding after hearing the value that you've brought to the school district? Because I'll let you answer that, but I'm going to tell you why I'm asking is because you know the situation that the school district finds themselves in, and where they start cutting. And so before I get into that, I just want to know the health of the Access Project, because I know that we at one point, one of the first things,
Yes.
matter of fact, when I got appointed here, was voting on giving Access Project ARPA money. And at that point, there was like check-ins, but then that's over. More than, as a stakeholder, just as a community member, as a parent with a kid in the school district for still many more years, do you have secure funding, and how does Access Project make sure that you will continue so that everything good that you have going on right now doesn't just fall off of a cliff like many other things?
That's a very good question. May I answer that by saying which organizations are funding us as opposed to the specific dollar amount?
I didn't expect dollar amounts.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
We get funds from the Community Foundation of Snohomish County. We get funds from Verdant Health Commission. We get funds from the NAACP. We get funds from the Rick Steves Foundation. We get funds, and I just want to say this is brand new with a very significant amount. We get funds from the White Horse Foundation. And there's one other that I'm sorry I don't recall the exact name, but Charlotte Foundation. So we have gotten funding from a broad number of organizations. But let me tell you what our challenge is. The challenge is we're able to get money for programs, but we're having challenges getting money for infrastructure. I've been volunteering since 2022, and I would like to have the program taken over by a project director. I would like to have an administrative assistant of some type, part-time or full-time. We'll get funds for the intake assessment. We get funds for all of the projects I talked about before, but we don't get enough for infrastructure. And so I completed a couple applications, and I just said, if we can't get infrastructure money, don't even consider the application.
I'm only asking, Wally, not for a quiz, but because I only feel like your program is going to feel more pressure with the changes for the next school year. If they decide to change the school start times, for one, that's just going to skyrocket mental health services. And then two, we already know that they've cut the family resource advocates in between sharing schools. And I have to wonder how much pressure you've absorbed from the changes with the SYNC coordinators, the student intervention, I don't even know what coordinators.
Right.
And so they too apparently were funded by 5 sources of grants, and somehow they just forgot to make sure that it was going to continue coming in, even though it was such a valuable program that other districts are modeling after it.
Right.
And so I ask you these hard questions because it seems like your work matters and is doing something.
Right.
And unlike them that are tied to legislation and budgetary decisions,
Right.
We can continue having this conversation to make sure that Access Project we don't have money either,
Yes,
right?
right.
But I think we have a little bit more collaborative environment here.
Yes, and we're constantly reaching out to other funding sources and putting in applications, even to organizations that don't solicit grants, but we send them letters and say, this is who we are. And we have enhanced our website. So if they go and look at the website, they can see who we are, and then they can invite us to be a funding source. But you're right. The Access Project has what I would consider an outstanding relationship with the Edmond School District and the Everett School District. We have a memorandum of agreement that they refer to us, their threat level 2 students, the one that are most challenging. And every school district in the state of Washington has to have a threat assessment team. And they're different from one school district to the next. But that team makes an assessment of that youth that's been referred to them, and they determine the level of the threat. And the threat level 2s are referred to us. And as I also mentioned, we've done the peer mediation program and stepped it up big time for this past year. So we have a strong, what I consider a strong partner relationship with the Edmond School District. Yes, we are pushing SRO because we feel that that is a program that is based on data that's proven that it makes a difference. And we're asking because of the number of violent crimes that are being committed where people are being killed and injured. We talk about the homicides, but we haven't talked about the number of youth who are down in Harborview even to this day because of a shooting. So it's trying to get in front of those things as opposed to after they occur.
Thank you, and this is a perfect segue into you all's SRO presentation and program, and I just want to say that we rushed you in here on purpose. Leadership has been talking about this. We brought forth a youth council, knowing that you guys were having a campaign. Now is the time to bring it out to the community. You guys have been doing God's work behind the scenes through a memorandum of understanding, but unfortunately, Wally, the community has never been able to access the data. I've tried through various community entities, and because it's various police jurisdictions, we could never get the full picture. But once you came out in a campaign, that's when the community starts listening, because if someone on the inside is crying for something on the outside, we have a bigger problem than we're aware of. And that's where God's work behind closed doors, it really does take a village. And that's why the people, Mayor Hurst was part of the task group of the Youth Council. President Coelho and myself, leadership, have been talking about this for weeks, and it just became more imminent as things have been stirring. Mental health is one thing, gang violence is another, but they all affect our children. And so I'm excited to hear about your proposal, but know that this is the city's way of actually talking about it and having a stance, maybe, or not, on what we're doing here.
Right.
So, thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions, general questions about Access Project before we get into, you have a PowerPoint, it looks like, up there to go to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Me too. I did it. Okay, Marie.
Hi, my name is Marie MacCoy. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in the field for over 20 years, and I'm a child mental health specialist, substance use disorder professional. So I specialize in child and adolescent behavioral health issues, so mental health and substance use. I am a mother of 2, and I live in the Meadowdale neighborhood. My husband runs the Jaguar Community Organization, and through that I met Wally about a year ago. And we started talking about the problems the youth are facing, And we've been kind of connecting about it for a year. And after the March shooting, we kind of sat down and we're like, we need to take the steering wheel on this one, and talked about how the idea that we're presenting here today with SRO is not perfect by any means, and it's not going to cure everything, but it is one step that that our community can put forth and support, hopefully get a little bit of change going. So, let's see, I'm going to go to number 3. One more. Okay, so we're talking about what's going on with the Edmonds School District. The schools are having some increasing challenges that it sounds like you guys are all aware of, and we're talking about our students who are experiencing emotional, mental health, behavior challenges, anxiety, depression, trauma, grief, anger. These are kind of leading towards the peer conflicts that we're seeing, the bullying, the school disengagement, family conflict, running away, and all of these other increased risky behaviors. So what we're finding is in the field of adolescent behavioral health is that these behaviors have been addressed less frequently than they were 10 years ago. So what's happening is these challenges are not being identified or addressed early, and they can escalate into suspensions, expulsions, self-harm, violence, justice system involvement, and other life-altering consequences. That combined with the delayed reaction from, every person of authority is that these behaviors are more severe and the interventions are becoming more intense in order to offset them. So Wally and I are here advocating for the goal of reinstating a new and improved SRO program. So in 2020, the Edmonds School District Board of Directors terminated the SRO program. And we're hoping that this change can help protect students and staff in times of threat, crisis, and emergency. We're hoping it can build constructive and trusted relationships between students and law enforcement, supports prevention, early intervention, and de-escalation. Partners with counselors, administrators, behavioral health professionals, and community organizations will all be key in making this work. Research estimates that each homicide cost the taxpayer $2.1 million. Since 2022, South County has experienced 8 homicides at an estimated cost of $16.8 million. And this does not include the cost of the perpetrators or the victims' families. So we're looking for the implementation or an agreement to implement a potential pilot program. And we'd like to see these selected schools that Wally will touch on first for the pilot program. We'd like to set clear evaluation measures and take community feedback. We want regular reporting to the board, student and parent input, and a 1-year review process. We're hoping that this allows the district to move thoughtfully and responsibly. And I think the goal here is that we understand that the police department has been responsive to the needs that we have. We're hoping that we can prevent those situations, decrease those situations to getting to the point of needing the police to come, needing school to be on lockdown, needing to, handle youth shootings. So a modern SRO program would help build trust relationships with students, identify concerns early, de-escalate conflicts before violence occurs, improve communication between schools and police, and connect youth and family to the resources that they need to be supported.
I just want to talk real quickly about the crime data and school safety involving police officers. Before I do that, I just want to share with you very quickly my background. I grew up in the rural South Alabama, when I grew up, segregation and Jim Crow were the law of the land. The laws then were enforced during the day by police officers in their blue uniforms, and they were enforced at night by those same individuals with white sheets and hoods over their heads. So if there's anybody in this room who understands or had fear of police more than I did, I would like to have a conversation. But I knew that I could not live with that particular mindset. I knew that the world was changing, and I knew that I had to change with the world. Yes, in this day and age, there are bad police officers. Yes, in this day and age, there are bad teachers. Yes, in this day and age, there are bad preachers and ministers. But we don't throw out the institution because of that. We try to make it better. And that's what we're talking about with the SRO in the sense of reimagining the SRO program, involving those students that they interact with every day in the process. So the data that we're about to show you is data that we have worked very closely with the Lynnwood Police Department, and we're still waiting on data from Edmonds and Montgomery Terrace. When the school district saw this data that you see on the screens right now, they were concerned about it being. It made clear that the middle schools did not have SRO officers, but the high schools did. What we did when we pulled this information together, we looked at schools within the Lynnwood Police Department district. These are the 3 schools in the Lynnwood middle and high schools in the Lynnwood district, police department's district. Now, let me say that the concern was to make sure it was clear that the middle schools did not have an SRO in the schools. That may have been the official agreement, but the SRO assigned to the Meadowdale High School also went back and forth to the Meadowdale Middle School because they were trying to get in front of the situations before they occurred. But be that as it may, we have expressly indicated here that the middle schools did not have assigned SRO in their schools. And however, it is clear that the data is correct. We went through this data multiple times, and we are sure that it is correct in terms of the information. Now, on this next slide, it kind of breaks down that first slide I just left. Cases reported from 49 to 91, an increase of 42 cases or 85%. Call services increased from 373 to 437, an increase of 64 or 17.20%. Arrest increased from 7 to 14, which is 100%. This is after. These increases occurred after the SRO program was ended. So it supports the need to have an SRO. I won't dwell on the call to action because, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Wally. So just to confirm,
Okay.
we did have corrected information on one of the slides. On that second one that you just passed, it included the middle school that did not have the SRO program as well?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that.
Right.
Okay.
This includes all of the arrests, all of the calls, all of the charges that happen in those 3 schools. The call to action is that we've been trying to reach our community in every way that we can to indicate whether the community supports this program. And so we're not going to go over that in this meeting because that's not what you're here for, is a call to action. But the thing that I like to do is thank you very much for the opportunity you've given us to explain what this program is all about and what we're trying to do in our community, which all of us are a part of. It's just not the school district cannot do it by itself. The city cannot do it by itself. The community cannot do it by itself. It takes all of us working together as a team to make this happen. Thank you.
Great. Questions? Councilmember Mata.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate that. I have a couple of questions, so bear with me here. I'll do one at a time.
Sure.
So the data shows police activity that increased after the SRO program ended. Your interpretation is that the lack of SROs was one of the factors that has led to this rise in police activity, calls, arrests, things like that. How do you determine that the increase was caused by the absence of SROs rather than other factors like post-pandemic behavioral changes, social media, enrollment shifts, and broader community trends?
There is definitely root causes that cause this. And you don't know the root causes until the incident occurs. So the thing that we were measuring is what data was available before and after. The root causes of those activities, we don't have data to support that. I can make assumptions, but I don't have data.
Okay. I appreciate that. I think I would also be interested in understanding the data more in depth similarly, like what kind of calls are these? Are these violent offenses, behavioral crisis, mental health incidences, trespassing, fights, that kind of thing? I think understanding the nature of the calls will help us before we can conclude like what kind of solution is most appropriate instead of just this overall baseline. But I understand you don't have that at this moment. One of the other things that I really appreciated about this presentation and the work that you do is the emphasis on early intervention, so mentorship, peer mediation, and connecting young people to behavioral and mental health resources. I think that's amazing. Those seem like really important investments in the long run. I think what I'm struggling to understand is how the evidence presented leads to the conclusion that we need police officers on campus. So I guess the question is what evidence tells us that a sworn law enforcement officer is the intervention that will produce better outcomes rather than investing in counselors, therapists, social workers, and other restorative justice principles?
That's a very good question. And we have not stated in any way that the SRO program is the solution. We know that's a program that exists or did exist. We knew that the program did have good results. And we're saying that if we bring this program back, times have changed since 2020 to 2026, some of the things that you mentioned. So we need to reimagine that program. And I think the voices of students would be very important because they understand what's going on now, some of the things that, whether it's social media or whatever it might be. But we cannot just do nothing.
Yeah.
So if there are some better ideas on what we should do, then let's do those.
Yeah, awesome.
Yes.
Last question, and I'm not sure if, yeah, do you have, sorry. Yeah.
A question that I get asked a lot is why wouldn't you put that budget towards more mental health counselors? And as a mental health counselor, I agree that it is absolutely worth every dime that you could put into it. We are all in agreement that it's absolutely necessary for these kids and the increase that we're seeing. I would like to say that as a mental health therapist and as I've been a manager most of my career, there is a very distinct role that counselors play and what an SRO could do to help protect the students and the community at large. And if we as counselors really want the students to utilize them as counselors, we cannot break that confidentiality, up until means we are mandated reporters, of course, but we can't be seen as someone that would also, tell them to get out of the hallways and go to class and stuff like that. We have to keep that therapeutic relationship. It's two very distinct scopes of work. And I also didn't see it in this presentation, but the SRO program is not, they would not be, it's not designed to act as typical law enforcement. And I know that there are SRO programs. It's a national, there's several national models of SROs. But one of the reasons why we're pushing this right now is because if they're able to utilize that position in the Lynnwood Police Department, they do significant training and they do act and have the skill sets of a lot of counselors. But when they are needed to take that extra step and to call back up, they already know the students, they already know what they're dealing with and hopefully how to dismantle any of the risky behavior before it gets to that point. So rather than a police officer coming on that has none of that background information and is coming in kind of cold, we're hoping to dismantle the need for that at that time.
Yeah, awesome, thank you. The last question that I have, and I don't know if this is you or if this is the mayor, we recently had a presentation from Chief Langdon about the upcoming budget and how the current force is understaffed. Based on my understanding and what you've written in before, Chief Cole has since offered one LPD officer to the school district at no cost to pilot this program. My question is, how is there enough resources to provide for this when it's been expressed that the current staffing numbers are inadequate?
Priority. He feels it's a huge priority, so he would sacrifice a little bit to get someone into the schools because he feels it's proactive, and it would actually, the benefit would be a reduction of what we hope, shootings and escalated crime. So he just is making it a priority.
Okay.
And I will also add, if I may, when you look at the 911 calls and you look at the officers who are going to those 911 calls and the paperwork that they have to do to document those 911 calls, and even more when there is an arrest, that time is equivalent to a FTE. So it's not like you are giving them something. You're just reallocating that FTE to that location, because if you don't do it, you're going to spend it anyway. It's just going to be spread around all different officers as opposed to one officer who's trying to reduce the number of calls.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. Anything that we can do, like you said, it's something.
Yes.
We know that something has to be done. We know the kids are struggling. So I appreciate you coming in and taking initiative and saying, here's an option. It may not be the total solution, but let's just throw it out there and see what sticks. So I do really appreciate you coming in and sharing with that. So thank you.
Council Vice President.
This is all really interesting and exciting to me because my son wasn't in high school when we got rid of the SROs. And I've honestly been poking around about this subject before the campaign because I knew that there was a group of community that have been wanting this for a while. And in my questioning of what I was told was you had to be there and during all of it in the Floyd and see why the school district got rid of it to be there to know how hard it's going to be to bring it back. And I was at a school board meeting just this past year where one of the school board members said, once the BIPOC community comes in here and starts asking us for the SROs themselves, then we'll start having the communication. Now, I didn't agree. I just thumbtacked that and thought to myself, well, that doesn't mean that we don't have a problem. And I noticed that they weren't talking about safety in there as if it wasn't a problem, because it's not happening in the schools, is what we were told. It's happening in the parks. So here we are. It's been all brought to light, and you guys have this proposal. I don't know yet one way or another which way I'm going to lean. I am also interested to bring in the youth council. And quite honestly, I would like to poll all of our middle schools and high schools and let the kids speak for themselves to see what their viewpoints are and how they would feel about a law enforcement officer versus a security guard with additional training. So with all that being said, I do feel like this pilot program would be inequitable. What about Lynnwood High School? What about the other high schools? At the end of the day, these are the only high schools that our officers can service, which is why you were able to get that data and why I have struggled getting more data. But what literally our taxpayers, the city of Lynnwood's kids, go mostly to either like Lynnwood High School and the problems. And so I would just feel like it would be inequitable for one school to have one and not the other, or just to get data. And so for me, just a preliminary opinion on the pilot program is one based on equity, where we know we have another school that could potentially benefit from it. And matter of fact, was the last one to get rid of theirs. And so I would be wondering about why one, not two. And just so that you know, Councilwoman Mata and community, we had these same questions in leadership. When we said, well, how are we going to do it? And the mayor said, well, he said. I'm like, he is we. He is ours. We have a budget coming up. We need to back this up or not. And that's why we want to hear from everyone. And this is just the first step in that. That's all. Oh, the only thing, and I just want, just so that I can be clear, that the advantage that I heard to having a police officer, because I've always been curious myself, is the line to the outside. Is that what I heard, Ms. MacCoy? Because they kind of have a pulse on what's going on out in the streets, and if a younger person is getting recruited, they have that line to the outside to do some additional kind of support and enforcement versus maybe a not police officer. Is that why you guys as an entity are proposing law enforcement in your model? I guess that's my question.
No, I don't know anything about the lines to outside or anything else. All I'm saying is that we had a program that was, by the data, was working, and it was discontinued for budgetary reasons or whatever reasons, and our perceptions, whatever it might be. I know that was at the time that George Floyd was killed and everything else, and so there were perceptions of police officers then. But the thing I'm trying to say is that we know a little bit about that program, and we know what can be changed to make a difference. And we get the right input and then try it. Once we try it, maybe Lynnwood will try it. Maybe the county will say, okay, let's do it in terms of Lynnwood High School. Or Malik Chairs will do it for Malik High School, or Edmonds will do it for Woodway. But the thing I'm trying to say is we got to do something. We got to do something. We just can't keep shaking our heads and saying, And I want let me close.
I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Yes.
One way or another, whatever happens.
Let me close with this. I want to just get real personal here. In a few months, I will be 82 years old. And I would love to be spending the rest of my life with my family, traveling, and doing all other kinds of things that I enjoy. But I feel that I've been blessed to help somebody. And I feel if I only help one person and prevent them from committing or suicide, prevent them from shooting somebody or killing somebody or being the victim or the perpetrator, I feel like my life would be worth it. I feel like the time that I spend 50, 60 hours a week working on this as a volunteer. As a matter of fact, I spend my own money to do this. I feel it's worth it. I feel that my living is not in vain. And so I'm just trying to help not a whole school. I'm trying to help one student who is not a victim of a homicide. If I can prevent one, all of this would be worth it. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
That was it.
Good.
Thank you.
We got two more questions, Council President and Councilmember Blue-Weiler. And then
You know how you said 20 minutes is all you're going to need? And I said, let's do 30.
How long has it been?
Oh, boy. So I just want to briefly touch on the pilot itself, because I love the idea of a pilot. It's something, it's experimental. You can see if it works. You can measure it against other schools. We can learn from it, as you stated. And so I was wondering, how long did you envision this pilot going on for?
I envision it going on for at least one school year.
Okay.
And we will be able to make assessments and determine, and hopefully that ties in with other budget periods, and they can make an assessment whether they want to keep it going or not.
Sure. And did you approach the Lynnwood Police Department and Chief Langdon? Did he approach you? Did the mayor get involved? I find it very fascinating how we've kind of inserted ourselves into this really interesting pilot, and I just wanted to get a better feel for how that relationship wore out.
Well, that's a good question. Since its inception, I have been a member of the Chief of Police Advisory Committee. And we talk about issues every meeting that we have, whether it was a recent shooting or whether it was some other incident, how the city is working, what is going on. And as a result of that, I have talked to every person who's willing to listen to me, including the mayor or anyone else. And because we need the village. And that's how we got to where we are today.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how this bears out. I'm looking forward to seeing how the school district responds tomorrow. Is that correct?
Right. We have been organized, and we're going as public comment because we can't get on the agenda, and we're working to tell this story in public comment. And I'm hoping in the August 18th board meeting, because they only have one in August, and one in July and one in August, that we'll get some kind of official feedback as to whether this program can go forward in September.
Okay, very good. Well, I appreciate proactive responses, and this seems like one that is trying to do that. So thank you again for your time. I think we have one more question. Is that right?
Councilmember Blue-Weiler.
I hate to even ask my question after that closing statement. So number one, I just wanted to say thank you for coming out and talking about this. I think a lot of us have felt that same sentiment that the status quo isn't working, something has to change, and you have at least staked out a position of here's my idea, and now people can, if they don't think it's the right idea, critique it and offer solutions and have this kind of debate. So I appreciate you helping to kind of force that conversation, because I think it just felt like nothing was happening, and we just were accepting that this was just something that we were going to live with in Lynnwood now. And I would be curious, a lot of my questions are maybe more directed to the school board, which I'll be trying to meet with some of them. But as we were hearing your presentation, I was thinking, what were the data points that the school board used when they decided the SRO program was not the most effective way to deal with some of these problems? And if we have those metrics, it would be great to then see how have those trended over the last few years? And do those data points exist? It's a valid point. COVID happened. The pandemic had a lot of negative impacts on all of us, but particularly youth. But we're also grappling, not that it's unrelated, but we're grappling with the gang violence. We're grappling with concerns that gangs are deliberately recruiting younger people in order to kind of, as a workaround or kind of taking advantage of some loopholes or whatever term you want to call it, but just taking advantage of changes that occurred at the state level with how juveniles are treated and prosecuted with firearms involved incidents. So it's just a lot that's going on in Lynnwood. It's more than just kind of misbehavior in the schools.
Yes.
We've got organized retail theft at the mall. Like there's things happening here that I think people have that concern about. Well, we don't want to over-police. We don't want to, have kind of juvenile just acting out that gets blown out of proportion. But there are really serious things happening that I don't think it's an either or. To your point, I think it's an all of the above. And I'd be interested to understand what were the resources that the school board put in place when they got rid of the SROs, and how is your relationship with those resources? How is that working out as a replacement to the SRO? Again, a lot of questions, maybe more for the school board, and certainly more than we can get into tonight, given the time. So I just again want to say thank you for coming out, helping us have this conversation. And as we've said a lot of times, at least when we talk about it, the community understands what are we talking about, what are we thinking, and it gives them something to respond to, whether they are in strong agreement or strong disagreement. Right. Like, we've got the conversation started. Right. Come join in so we can try to figure this out together.
Right. Thank you.
Councilmember Partial wants to wrap this up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Wally. Thank you, Maria, for being here. And the most powerful thing you've said tonight, I think, Councilmember Lynnwood, for bringing it up again, is nothing shouldn't be an option, right? How many times do people get frustrated, problems in their community, and politicians throw up their hands and say nothing can be done? And so I appreciate that you've taken the lead on doing something. As you know, I have a background in education and have worked in schools with SROs. And I would say one thing that's like, you miss those anecdotal stories of personal touch. SROs learn how the gossip network works at schools, and students ultimately feel comfortable coming to them with something that maybe they wouldn't call 911 for, or they wouldn't go in a counselor's office for. Little things like, hey, Tommy and Billy are planning to meet behind the school and fight after school, and that SRO, if they're doing their job well, has a light touch. Right. And they run into Billy in the hallway and they go, hey, Billy, I better not see you behind the school. Yeah. After school, it's out. And for Billy, that's an out anyway. It's like Billy and Tommy don't want to fight, and having the SRO there is a great way of like getting them out of that commitment to fight.
And it's preventive.
Yes. And I'm curious, I think what hopefully you're putting forward is going to be different than what existed before, because I like the idea of SRO working with your peer mediators. And I see that as a multiplier, hopefully, for both sides. So is that something, if you're successful in getting the SRO program reinstalled in schools, do you see those two working together, the school resource officer and your peer mediators?
That's an excellent idea. Excellent idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Very good.
Excellent idea.
Mr. Webster, I think you're excused now.
Thank you very much.